Okay, here we are now. It's March the 4th, 2014. And I've been doing some work on the frames in the interim since the last shots we took. And so today, yesterday I guess I set this up whereby I'm going to take the stem that I've fabricated. This is the stern stem on the boat that I've set up, and if you'll see that there's a plank on the workbench here that's been set up, and it's curved and it's set to simulate the bottom of the boat, whereby each end is raised up by 3/4 of an inch, and so that it has this bevel, so that everything is exactly the way it's supposed to. And you can see here where I've mounted the stem on the plank and adjusted it from front to back enough to where I've established where the vertical measuring stick is. That's the position of frame 3 on the boat. The frame 3 mounts on the stem, and that's on both ends. You can see here also where I was talking in an earlier thing about the bevels, and I've driven the screws in and marked the locations of where the screws are, and so that it's going to be a pretty sturdy joint, I'm pretty sure. And I've also marked on the stem underneath, you can see a series of locations here where I've marked various degrees. These are these angles here, and there's one up here, and they're on the drawings by John Gardner. He establishes locations where these measuring locations to establish the calculations you're going to need to determine the bevel of the stem. And you can see this location is 27, this is 37, that's 41 degrees, and this is 46 degrees, just so I can keep track of them. And then I've also marked here little lines where if you were to make a 37 degree cut from the center of the stem this way, this is where the edge of the bevel would be, and likewise you can see it gets better, more steep here, and you get down, it's more shallow and more shallow. Anyhow, the other lines that we've done, I've also, in addition to marking, I've put a piece of tape along the bottom of the bench, and I've marked on here the locations again, like I said, of station 3. And now these are the locations of the various plank intersections that will establish the shear of each of the planks. This is the garboard plank shear. This is going to be the top of the garboard plank. This is the top of the broad plank. This is the top of the binder plank, and then of course this is the upper shear level of the boat. This area up above that I've left for tacking on temporary supports, because we're going to be building the boat upside down, and I want something to attach so that the extenders going to the floor will be connected here. Anyhow, all I'm doing here is verifying that these various intersections here, where the locations of those planks are shown on the drawings. Here, I'll go back over here and I'll show you an example of what I'm talking about. On my drawing program, these measurements here come out of John Gardner's book. And so what I've done is on the tape on the bottom of the bench, I've measured all of these lines here and then drawn them up. I've revised it to allow for the fact that I'm higher than the workbench surface there, and his measurements are taken from an arbitrary baseline that is 5 7/8 above the baseline to the bottom of the inside bottom of the boat, right at that location. So again, and then of course the bench, you can see I've marked my own, it's 1 5/8 from the workbench up to the top of the plank at this location, if that's not confusing enough. But it's, you know, fidgeting around with this thing by moving the stem back and forth, and whenever I needed to get some uplift or drop to the stem, I would take the stem out and put it in a vise, and I would plane the bottom, either taken off from this edge or this edge, to allow the stem to tilt just as much as I needed to get it to the right location. So it's a tuning process, and it's not discussed very much in the books about how all of this is supposed to happen. He does say in the narrative he wants these locations, the shear locations, identified on the stem. That's very important, especially the top shear line. But I mean, when you're laying the planks, as you can see, the garboard plank is gonna come up off of the bottom piece here, and it'll come up this high. It's a wide plank, and then the one above it will come up to here. Like I say, this is the next plank, and there's a slight tilt going here. So what I've done is, on the drawings, I've identified the elevation of each of those locations of these lines and where it extends back to frame 3, the knuckles on the edges of the frames. So then I would draw a straight edge across from this intersection over to the elevation here to give me the drop in elevation as you're coming, because all of these planks, as you can imagine, come up at a slight slope, and they're not perfectly parallel. Anyhow, that's I now have to work on the next stem, and after that I will begin beveling the stems in a rough bevel. I'm going to leave plenty of room on the wood for fine tuning, but and then of course I will start assembling the bottom itself. This is this board that's on the bench right now is going to be the center plank of 3 planks. There will be 3 8-inch wide planks, and there are the other ones against the wall over there that I'll clamp together. I'm actually considering using biscuit jointer to make the connections stronger, and I'm using a marine sealant in between the seams to give it even more, water tightness, etc., and make sure that the joints are tight. The planks have already been jointed on the edges to give a nice straight smooth surface, so that's work out of the way. So anyhow, that's where we're at as of March 4th, 2014.